good to see you again at TC3 here in Silicon Valley.
My pleasure.
Last week, Author Little held a digital transformation summit in Munich. Tell us about some of the highlights.
You know, digital transformation is a very broad topic. So we focus in particular on the IoT space, Internet of Things. And the format was quite exceptional because we brought the Vodafone of this world, etc., talking about the way how they can enable companies to embrace IoT from a connectivity and infrastructure standpoint. But we also brought insurance companies that need, on the longer term, to adapt their risk profile and develop dedicated pricing model for the customer, thanks to new technology. So we're talking here about a company that will completely rethink its pricing value proposition based on IoT. We also had in the panel BMW talk to the digital transformation on the car industry that goes through the order processing, the interfaces in the future, the interior of the car, everything will be interactive digital, but also autonomous cars and all the custom experience you may have, because if you buy a car today, you can use it across all potential models, either your own car or you'll be renting a car in another city. So the consistency of the experience should be secured. If you would rent a BMW in the world, you should have the same experience as it would be your car. If you use a mobility service of a city and it happened to be a BMW, you should have the same experience. So the business models are changing dramatically, and it's about securing the consistency of the digital experience. Going further, we had a wonderful presentation of Siemens that were focusing and embracing the technology to reconsider completely the production model, which is becoming digital, but digital in the sense that you can think of yourself, remember the Second Life, where you have an avatar and you live in a total digital environment. So what they have done, they have replicated all the processes of a factory into a digital world, and they call it digital twin. So you have more and more companies now that are totally shifting. We saw it initially in the pharmaceutical industry, where they started to, before they go to the lab phase 3, which is a very expensive process, they model and they simulate all the experiences totally different. Now you have the next big wave is hitting the industries, process industries. And you can think of whatever ingredient from a product to a human to a robot that is part of that processing is already tested, simulated, totally in a digital environment. And this, for me, was the biggest, I would say, insight, where on the one side, the telcos are providing still very much core connectivity product, and some of the industry are far ahead in adopting and embracing digital in their operating model and operations.
So you mentioned the operator, and when we say operator, it could be a wired or wireless operator. What role do you see them playing in this digital transformation, fourth industrial revolution?
Well, I was just talking to BT a few minutes ago as they were giving a speech on digital transformation, and there are two areas you need to think of. The first one is the large corporation, where they have multiple sites, multiple factories, etc. So it's very difficult for a telco to simulate, so to say, their core operation in digital environment. However, what they can do is to support them with the connectivity. If you, for instance, connect multiple factories, you need high quality voice, you need high quality video, you need high quality data processing, you need security, cybersecurity topic we heard before. So actually, in the course of the digital transformation, you need a lot of elements in your operation that would become digital, and where you need to secure the highest service of connectivity, whether mobile or fixed, clearly. When it comes to the small and medium enterprises, the focus is very different. We see that consumers typically do use social networks. They're totally digital already. They all have a smartphone. If you look at the website of small and medium companies, you will find out that on a mobile device you cannot really surf because the quality is not there, and they have not adopted and embraced the mobile platform for that. And you can take all the small processes of a small and medium enterprise, whether it's the exposure of your product, order processing, e-commerce, booking. For instance, why do you need to make calls to book a slot? Why all these, or a restaurant or a lawyer, why all that is not already through digital interfaces, where you see exactly the slots? You can eventually get first an IP VoIP chat, expose your problem, then get a dedicated slot, and all that is without going through the classical model we know today. So that is enabled through basically three technologies. The, I would say, infrastructure as a service, where you support the cloud-based application, where you support the backup services, etc. Then you move away to the platform as a service. And last but not least, software as a service. And then you have, for every dedicated step of a small enterprise, whether it's HR services, accounting, etc., you actually go for software as a service. So you see the needs for large corporation and the small corporation in the digital transformation are very different. And the telcos need to define, based on their direct relationship with multinational companies, how to set up a go-to-market strategy versus in a small environment where it's about indirect channel. They may rely much more on interaction and enable small and medium enterprises by, let's say, push services that are hosted on the platform of British Telecom or Dutch Telecom or Verizon, right?
Let's close by talking about, not to belittle, in the role you're playing, whether it be with enterprise or carriers, in developing and implementing a transformation strategy, specifically around IoT or 5G.
Yeah. Many companies are still not familiar with what IoT means, right? So let me give an example. Sometimes companies believe that IoT is just another technology. However, this technology may have a huge impact. So if you're a car manufacturer, just to give you an example, all your slogan communication is about driving a car and enjoying the car. With IoT, if we move to autonomous cars, then you're not anymore in control of the car. So the value proposition to the customer has to change completely. Eventually, you will be providing augmented reality services, virtual reality services, where you will have all the feeling and emotion in a total virtual environment. So an IoT can totally, let's say, put upside down even the essence of what the car manufacturer could be. So that's the extreme case.
Right.
But let's be more pragmatic. We have a lot of companies that suffer from huge maintenance costs. We're talking about efficiency here. So if you think of railway, or if you think of large companies that have a lot of sites everywhere, you're not in a position today to do the maintenance through, let's say, sensors, because the battery life cycle, the product. So what you need is to have a sensor that stays there for 5-6 years without touching it, and that reduces a lot the human interface to maintain these products. So what you would do is then deploy IoT-based sensors, which dramatically reduce the human interaction, reduce the cost of operation, and you have more and more companies helping smaller companies providing end-to-end services to enable the operations with IoT technologies and reduce the cost. And what we do is adopting generally the new emerging technologies to reduce the cost, whether it's 5G that will enable through the low latency total new applications, right? Or because of the latency, you can afford to provide much more real-time twin kind of services, right? Or in the IoT to reduce the cost. But you can also leverage IoT technologies, as I mentioned, the insurance, to rethink how you would price your product. Car rental as well could optimize their car distribution and supply chain around IoT technologies, and so forth. So we can give you a lot of examples where IoT has a huge impact on the top line as well as in the cost savings. And our role is to highlight the technologies to help the company to transform the business model in terms of organization structure, who will be responsibility on all these new technologies, how would you adapt the operating model, how would you invest, for how long, what are the technologies that are short-term, mid-term, and long-term, and how you redefine your customer interfaces, so processes, structure, KPIs, etc., of managing the channels as you're moving customer from one channel to the other to serve them more cost effectively.
I do have one more question for you, and it really stems around, what do you see as the biggest challenge for adoption? Is it the business case, is it technology, or is it actually the soft side of the organizational changes?
You mentioned all of them. I think it all starts with top-down. If the CEO and the management board is very much conservative and doesn't adopt technologies as a mean to change the business model, it's always difficult. So you will always have a small division taking care of these technologies, but as soon as they come, they think of a business case, of course, and the business case can be challenged because you always, on the new technologies, you actually are taking bets.
Right.
So if you don't have the support from the management, you get always challenged in the business case. And the question is the return of investment 3-5 years, or is it much long term, and you're actually betting on this technology to differentiate completely from your competitor who are slower in going so. So I would say the mindset of the top management and the understanding of the technologies plays an important role. The rest is then how to reorganize the company to change the process toward your customer, because there is a lot of ownership of certain division on how you interact with the customer. And I just gave you in the case of BMW the example of how many elements are, let's say, revolutionized, whether it's customer experience, the interior design of the car with all the interaction, the autonomous car elements, who takes this decision and responsibility. And the larger the corporation is, the more complex it is, because you have too many stakeholders intervening, and you need to make sure that you have a top-down also support to enforce this change.
Karim, thanks for your time.
My pleasure, as always.